of all, I just want to say welcome to WVTV, A Girls Conversation. And this is episode 16, and it's all things women. Today, we have invited some brothers here to join us, okay? And we welcome you to, this is a place to discuss challenges from the past, questions of the future, adversities we face from day to day. No topic is off limits. So this is a place we grow in our faith and share the keys to build and empower one another to walk in purpose and destiny. And it's through our conversation, we learn to live and love like Jesus. So I am your host, Carol Diane, and co-host Women of Destiny. And let me introduce our very special guest today. I'm going to speak a little bit about her. I'm just honored to have her here today. She is a board-certified medical doctor and author of 3 best-selling books, which I'm sure she will share later. She is an autoimmune disease specialist and has been featured on TV news, home and family shows, as well as many radio shows and podcasts. She is healing the world with her testimony of how she beat the lupus disease and 4-stage kidney failure. Wow. And our topic today is the interview of life, how to prevent and reverse chronic illness and inflammatory symptoms. Let's welcome Dr. Brooke Goldner. I'm so excited to have you here. And
I'm happy to be here.
Yes, we're going to dive right in. I just want you to share, your story and your testimony.
All right, I'll give you the short version.
Okay.
Before I was ever a doctor or an author or any of the things you just mentioned, I was a patient. And so when I was 16 years old, I already had rashes, arthritis, migraines, and my mom was taking me to the doctors, and it took them a while to figure it all out. And then finally, one day when I had a very bad episode, I'd been in the sun all day at the pool. I got a terrible migraine. I started vomiting. And then when I was done vomiting, the rash on my face was really bright, and I was just feeling so sick. And my parents took me to the hospital. They called my doctor who met us there. And that's when they finally diagnosed me with lupus. She saw it all at the same time. They ran the test and they confirmed it. And while I was there and they ran all these tests, they also discovered that I was already in stage 4 kidney failure from the lupus. That was painless. I didn't have pain in the kidneys. I had pain in my joints, but they said, the kidney function is very low. We need her to go get a kidney biopsy. So then I ended up in a surgery to get a biopsy. And then a couple of days later, seeing the nephrologist for the first time. And that's when things suddenly got very serious. It's one thing to have headaches. Okay, our family has migraines. Maybe it's just family stuff. And my joints hurt. That's weird, but maybe it was from volleyball tryouts or something. You always try to make excuses. I don't know why I had a rash, sun hives, just my mind never really put it together that I had something seriously wrong with me. But when we went to the nephrology appointment, it was my mom came with me and my grandmother. My grandmother helped raise me. My grandparents were refugees from the Holocaust. So they were imprisoned and suffered through the Holocaust. They came here to start their life over so we could have freedom and, live the lives that they couldn't. And so she helped raise me. And she's one of the reasons I am who I am today. So she was there. And my grandma is tough. I never saw her cry, even when my grandfather died, until that night when we got home from the nephrologist's office, because what he said was, this kidney disease is very severe. And the current treatments we have for lupus, which this is 30 years ago. So the current treatments we have for lupus are not strong enough to save her kidneys. So with the current treatments, in 6 months, she'll be lucky to be on dialysis. And if not, she'll be dead. Wow. So it was just a shocking thing to hear. And then the next sentence was, but we do have an experimental treatment that might help. And so nobody wants to be an experiment, but I wanted to be dead less. So we went ahead and did that. But that night we came home and we told my father what happened. And my grandmother just lost it. And she was on her knees praying to God to just take her life to spare mine. And it was just burned into my head forever. So, it was a very hard time. And at the same time, I was raised, by immigrants who said, you just do what you got to do. You got to survive. You got to work. You got to do what you got to do. You can't choose your circumstance. You choose how you face them. And so I also knew that I was lucky, even to be this sick, to be free, to have doctors, to have a beautiful home, to have a school to go to. I still was lucky compared to where my grandparents came from. So I had a perspective that a lot of people, I think, don't get. Most people don't feel lucky when they're diagnosed with autoimmune disease or kidney failure, but I did. And my grandmother always used to tell me I'm a lucky girl, which most survivors don't say, but she felt it because she had family and she had love and she had freedom and she was present in the moment rather than in the past, right? So I'm very grateful that I had the family I did. And they just said, you know what? First of all, you're going to survive this. You've got stuff to do. You got to go to school. You got to learn. And we'll just schedule your classes and your studying around the treatments. The experimental treatments were to use chemotherapy to shut my immune system down. So anybody who has autoimmune nowadays, or maybe just like Selena Gomez, has heard of this, that they will use something called cytoxin chemotherapy. And the reason that they use it in lupus is because what they found is in cancer, when you give people chemotherapy, their immune system stops working. And that's why people with cancer often will wear those masks or will end up with infections because the chemo, their immune system. So they said, what if we did it on purpose? If your immune system is the reason that you're dying from lupus, it's like before this interview, I rebooted my computer. I shut it off and turned it on again just to avoid any glitches, right? So they thought, what if we do that with the immune system? We'll shut it off, reboot, bring it back, and see if suddenly things work. And it did work, but it took years. I was on chemo for 2 years. So from 16 to 18 years old, they kept raising the dose every month, trying to see how much it took to slow this down. And then after the first year, they tried to stop it, but the kidneys started to go again. And so I had to go back and do it another year. So I did it for 2 years, plus super high doses of steroids. And they gave me medicines to suppress my puberty because then the chemo could give me ovarian cancer and make me sterile. And, so you need medicines for the side effects of the medicines. But I just did it. So I would schedule, like if I knew that I had chemo on Friday, then I would study like the week before for my test on Monday. So it's just like, I made it practical. I thought about my disease only as long as I had to. And then I moved on. Like I learned how to take 7 pills in one swallow because that way I only had to think about pills for 30 seconds versus 1 pill at a time. It felt like too much time to be sick. So I just like compartmentalized, like swallow it, done. Now I'm just a student going to high school. You know what I mean? So I would just that's how I functioned. And I studied whenever I could, I studied. So I still graduated in the top 10 of my class. I got a scholarship to my dream school. And I had my last chemo session a week before I went to college. And actually at that time, they said that the kidney failure was in remission. So it was a really exciting time. And it was, listen, I still did take medication. I still had lupus. All my blood tests showed I had lupus. I had protein in my urine that they said was permanent because the kidneys were damaged, but I didn't need chemo, which for me that's remission. That's great. And so that I lived life that way and I had chronic disease. I was taught as a scientist and as a doctor that it is a chronic and progressive disease. It means chronic means you always have it. Progressive means it gets worse over time. And so I just learned how to live that way, that there were times when I had to be in the bed. There were times when I couldn't do things other people could, because if I went out in the sun, it made me sick. So I couldn't go to the beach. I couldn't do things other people did, but I rejoiced in what I could do. And really I managed pretty well. Medical school, I got sick again because I couldn't manage my life as much. They tell you that if you have autoimmune disease, always get enough sleep and avoid stress. So, and avoid the sun. There's no sunlight when you are in medical school, but stress and sleep are not, they're just unavoidable. So lupus I had a flare up, not in my kidneys, but I got blood clots and I was having mini strokes. So I was getting double vision and I passed out one of the clinics. And so I was having blood clots that were going into my brain. So then I had to start taking injectable blood thinners, and so each time something bad would happen, I started calling myself the comeback kid because I refused to think of myself as someone who was going to die. So I just decided I'm the one that gets all the bad stuff, but then I come back.
Wow. Wow.
That was how I saw myself. And you live into who you believe you are, right? So I've just decided that's how I got through scary things was, this is scary now, but I'm going to beat it. I'm going to come back and it'll be a story. It'll be a thing. And that's how I was happy to live. You know, I never imagined that I would ever be free of it. And me becoming free from lupus was an accident that happened because I fell in love with the right person. But I was perfectly content to live a life of chronic illness that still included purpose and passion and joy. You know, and that's really what my goal was in becoming a doctor, was to help others do that, to not give up your life just because you have a disease, but to find a path toward making it meaningful and beautiful in spite of the disease, or maybe even because of it.
Wow. You know, you said something about the pills.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, a lot of people take more than one pill. And you were saying how one pill will be something for that one, and you know, and another pill will be, and then you just wind up in a whirlwind because you're really getting healed. Is that correct? Because you're.
Yeah, well, when you have autoimmune disease or really any serious disease, oftentimes the medicines that it takes to control it wreak havoc on other parts of your body, right? So like taking the steroids made my legs swell up, gave me terrible reflux. It can dissolve your bones, gave me bone loss, you know. So it's like, okay, you got to take this for that and this for that. So it's like, that's one of the reasons why they only want to use those meds if it's going to be life-saving. You don't just give somebody those meds. That's why we don't use autoimmune suppression in the most common autoimmune disease there is, hypothyroid. People don't even think about it. When they have Hashimoto's, they don't think that they have autoimmune disease, and they do. But because you can replace the thyroid with one pill, we're not going to give you immune suppression and you know, risk your life with these terrible medicines when you can replace it with a pill. Kidney you cannot replace with a pill. We're talking dialysis, we're talking transplant. Okay, let's see what we can do. So you have to make decisions on medicines based off of the risk of taking it, but also the risk of not taking it. I think sometimes people are scared of medicines because they're worried about side effects, but they forget to think about what's going to happen if I don't take it, right? So with medicines, we're always in that zone of like, we have to figure out the best path so that we can live, right? And we have to deal with side effects and things. You know, when you're working in natural realms and nutrition, other things, we don't have those risks. But, you know, I'm still a Western doctor and I believe meds are life-saving. They're just not health-giving.
Right.
And we can do better when we can use things that are health-giving as well.
I'd like to ask, what are the different autoimmune diseases?
So there's many autoimmune diseases out there. Most common ones you hear about, I just talked about Hashimoto's, but the ones that are treated in the autoimmune world, so lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, those are common ones people think about, scleroderma, Sjogren's. A lot of people have a label of like mixed connective tissue disease, which means you got autoimmune, we're not sure which one. You're mixed. You're mixed. You got maybe a little this, a little this, a little that. And so basically we don't know which one yet. But I really see them all as the same, because what's really happening is there is something that's stimulating this dysfunction in the immune system. And then when the immune system's not functioning properly, now it can misfire, and it's protecting us from viruses, bacteria, things like it's supposed to. It starts attacking our own tissues because it doesn't know what it's doing anymore. Someone with multiple sclerosis is going to have neurological issues and trouble walking and things like that. Somebody with Sjogren's is going to have dry mouth, dry eyes. But when you go backwards to find the starting point, it's the same. And so a lot of times people will even ask me, you know, what is the trigger? What turns it on? And on the internet, you're going to find all sorts of weird theories. You know, some people are convinced there's a virus that does it, and someone else thinks it's like parasites that does it. But what I found is it's stress to the body that does it. And that can come from a virus or a drug or some other kind of infection, or it can come from the loss of a loved one. They found that being in mourning causes your inflammation markers to spike higher than anything else. And I've met so many people who developed autoimmune right after the loss of someone they love, or moving to another country, or being in school and getting high stress and not sleeping, getting a divorce. There's stressors that happen. So I think of it kind of like a storm system rather than a light switch, where you have like the heat, the elevation, the how much water, you know, humidity, wind, right? So you have like a genetic predisposition, and then on top of that, you've got how much sleep do you get? How good's your diet, or how bad is it? How much stress is happening in your life? And under the right conditions, you can get a storm that turns on those genes for disease. But that also means that you can undo those conditions and turn the gene off again. And that's what I discovered. And I didn't get to that part of it yet, but what I discovered by accident, and it really was by accident. I mean, I was a genetic scientist, and then I became a medical doctor. And I still never believed there was a way to not have lupus. People ask me that sometimes. How did you know? I didn't know. I'm always amazed when my patients say they knew there was something better. I'm like, really? Because I never thought that, but I'd had lupus since I was a kid. I guess I was raised into it. But what happened was I fell in love with the most incredible human. His name's Thomas Tadlock. And when he met me, I had just settled down from the blood clots. So I was taking my injections every day for my blood thinners, and I was back to feeling really grateful because I came back again. There it was, that, all right, I couldn't, if I fell and hit my head, I could bleed out, but at least if I watched my step and, I took my meds, I could still graduate. And that's really all I wanted. I figured I could still be a doctor in a wheelchair. And that's what they predicted, having been 6 and 16, probably by my 40s, if I made it, I would be disabled. And that was, I kind of knew that, but I said, okay, I can do that. The mini strokes, that's the first time I got upset, because without my brain, if I couldn't do my job, there was nothing else for me. I'm not meant to be, I can do some karaoke, but I'm not meant to be a singer. I can dance a little bit, but not gonna be professional. I'm not an athlete, you know what I mean? So it was like, this was my way, and that was stressful, but I'd come back from it and I was like, all right, I'm here, I did it. And I had gotten my first choice residency out in UCLA and Harvard in California. And so I met my husband, and it was just like, we came together and like still have not unvelcroed. And it's been 20 years since I met him, but he was just an incredible person. And we knew that it was right. And after a month, he was already talking to me about marriage. And I had to have this conversation, two 28-year-old people, that, listen, if you marry me, you have to understand that I'm not going to live a long life. I'm going to become disabled before I die, and you'll have to take care of me. I've been told that if I try to have children, that it would kill me, if the kid even survived. It's not exactly a romantic answer to a proposal, and it's a lot to take on 28, I say as a kid. Back then we felt very old, but really as a kid. And his best friend he'd ever had died of cancer at 24. And then he said, I finally found a new best friend. Wow. And then you're telling me you're short term too, but he had the courage to love someone sick. And I think it takes courage, but I also always accepted love. I have patients who tell me they feel bad that someone loves them when they're sick, that somehow they're a burden. And I always say, listen, you don't get to tell someone who they get to love. Like, that's, if they want to love you, then take that in, and that's for them too, right? So he told me that, I'd rather live a short life with you than a lifetime with anyone else, and I'll just make it the best darn life you could ever have.
That was amazing.
So I said, yes, let's get married.
That's amazing. That's an amazing story.
Well, it gets more amazing. So what happened was, we decided to get married. And then my husband is actually a brilliant scientist. He has his own best-selling book called Miracle Metabolism. And his research was to try to understand the optimal diet for human metabolism. He believed that there was one best way for humans to eat, like every other species. Why do we know what every species
do that? Yeah.
They're like, why is there a perfect diet for a koala bear, for a giraffe, for a lion, and humans don't know what to eat? We're arguing. We don't know what to eat. And he said, we've forgotten, but there is an optimal way. So he was thinking in terms of fitness. Everyone should be able to have abs if they want it. They should be able to be, low body fat. They should have muscle. And so that was his research. And so when we were going to get married in Hawaii, and I was going to be in a bathing suit and a strapless dress, I was like, I want to go on your diet, because he was training people for MTV at the time, which I don't know how many people, like, I'm in my 40s. So back then that was really cool.
I remember.
Yes, did you ever watch The Beach House? When they used to do The Beach House, and they'd have all the celebrities come, they'd all be dancing at the beach house in the Hamptons. Do you remember that?
I think I saw that.
He was the hottest body at the beach house 2003. Okay, yeah. So he was using his science, and he was experimenting on himself, and he was getting such good results. MTV hired him to come and train like people who had to do music videos and stuff, because they need a 6-pack in 3 weeks. They bring him into New York, train them. So I said, well, I want an MTV body. I want to look like that, and I was out of shape. I mean, the best diet to be out of shape and sick is hospital food.
Yeah.
That stuff, It's good for hospital business, not good for you. So I was overweight and just, and just wanted that help. So I asked him to create a program for me, and he had to change his program for me from what he usually did because I didn't eat meat. I was a vegetarian. He'd never trained a vegetarian. But then he said, you put cheese on everything. You eat eggs 5 times a day. All that saturated fat's not going to give you any help. So he had taken some things out. So we made a unique formula for me. And what happened is it worked, first of all. I went from a size 11 to a size 3 in 3 months, and I was ripped at my wedding. So that was cool. But at the end of that 3 months, I no longer had any symptoms of disease. I had no migraines. I had no more protein in my urine when they did my lab tests. All my lab tests for lupus were negative for the first time. And I'd been sick at that time for 12 years straight. Wow. I had never had a negative lab test in 12 years. It was keeping me stable. But if you looked, I had all the antibodies, I had the protein in the urine, I had all sorts of issues. And they were negative. So surprising that the doctors made me redo the test because they thought the lab made a mistake. And it was negative again when I came back from my wedding, tested again, and all my blood clot antibodies were gone. My cholesterol, which had been high since I was 21, and my doctor said it had nothing to do with all the cheese I was eating. It was just genetic. My cholesterol was down to like 155. So all these things happened. And in October, that will be 18 years ago. And in 18 years, I have never had a relapse. I've had 2 beautiful kids. I have a 10-year-old and a 14-year-old son, both of them brilliant, like way smarter than my husband and I. We have challenges. Like they're brilliant, incredible people who have no health problems themselves. And I am strong and fit. Like I was on the cover of Fit Over 40 when I should have been. I was hoping to be alive over 40, but to be an example of health and fitness now. I just had my colonoscopy because I'm 46. So it's been this right now. It's 30 years since they told me I had 6 months to live. Right. And I had a colonoscopy and he applauded for me. My GI doctor said, your insides look like you're a teenager, which at 46, I'm glad something looks like a teenager. But, to know that the same body that was almost dead at 16 is unusually healthy at 46 is quite remarkable. And so, when my husband and I, like when I got better, we didn't know at first that we did that. We didn't know if it was just a blessing, like it was a wedding gift from God or something, or if it was something else. But after I had my first son with no relapse, he's a scientist as well, as I said. So we got to looking at the science. We said something happened because 1, I should have gotten the lupus back, but with the pregnancy. Number 2, I was back in my size 2 genes 9 days after giving birth. So he's like, my metabolism theory is correct, but what's going on with this lupus thing? And so we decided to spend the next year reverse engineering it and looking at what is the cellular impact of nutrition? How does it affect inflammation, cellular function, cellular communication, gene expression, and immune function? And what we found was we accidentally created a protocol that was the most anti-inflammatory pro-recovery protocol that we'd ever seen. And even then we didn't talk about it. We tested it for free on people who volunteered from like the Lupus Foundation. And only when we could reproduce it every time, that's when we brought it to the public. And we decided to release it to the public for free because I always say you have to save your life. And my husband says you got to save your wife. So our protocol has been released to the public for years. And we've had thousands of people all over the world just write us messages that they just followed my free content online and they got their health back. And it's just been a beautiful, wonderful thing that what happened to me and what our love gave me has now been, my greatest gift to then give the world.
That is beautiful. Could you tell me, Dr. Brooke, what was the thing that reversed it? What did you do?
Yes. So what's known as the Goodbye Lupus Protocol, because that's the name of my first book, was Goodbye Lupus. And it was really my way of kind of giving it to the world. Like, hey guys, check this out. This is going to help you out. Right. And people kept coming to me and saying, I wish you had a book so I could tell my friend or my aunt or my sister. Right. Yeah. And so that was what pushed me to do that. And it became a bestseller when I hadn't even published it yet. I put it up as a pre-order on Amazon. I don't think you can do that anymore, but back then, and it was already a bestseller. And I went, who's even looking for this? Like I had less than 100 followers online and it was like, what? So when we released that, what kind of, then people started seeing it and using it. But the Goodbye Lupus Protocol works for anything. It is, again, specific to cellular function and cellular repair. So it works for MS, it works for rheumatoid arthritis, it works for diabetes, it works for high blood pressure. Because again, all you're doing is giving your cells what they need to fix themselves. Because it turns out they already know how. Right? That's why when you get a paper cut, you don't need to sew it because your body knows how to fix it, right? But if you've got massive amounts of damage that have been caused by this surge of inflammation that activated these genes for disease, well, it's going to take more than one roll of thread, right? One spool of thread. We need a lot of nutrients to give the body what it needs to repair itself. So the basis of the Goodbye Lupus protocol is what I call hyper-nourishment, which is an overdose, an intentional overdose in the nutrition your body uses to repair itself and to have optimal immune function. So what does it need? Vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, omega-3s, water, and not from a supplement. It doesn't work. I wish I could give someone a pill and they were better. We need to come from the source where we were meant to get it from, right? And I always say to people, listen, whether you are religious and believe the Garden of Eden or whether you believe in evolution, both ways we started in a garden, all right? Both ways we started there where the food for us was supposed to be growing. And it turns out that's how we absorb nutrition the best. So when you're looking for the highest dose of vitamins and minerals and antioxidants, those come from vegetables. And the highest dosage is cruciferous vegetables. So cruciferous vegetables are the ones that have by far the highest doses of nutrition possible. So vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, all that kind of stuff. So cruciferous vegetables examples are usually things like kale, cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, all of these things. And so one, what they do is those are tools that your cells need to fix themselves, right? So when you have fruit, you get vitamins, but minerals come from soil. Who's in the soil? Vegetables, right? So when you're getting all of that through your food, it absorbs quickly into your system, along with the fiber that actually helps reverse autoimmune disease itself. There was a recent study that they just gave rats with lupus fiber, and some of them got remission, right? But we don't want separate fiber. Eat the fiber with the food, like eat it together, right? So high doses of the cruciferous vegetables. So I usually encourage people to start out with pretty hefty dose, like a pound a day. Now you can eat them in salads. You could have like a little bit of salad with every meal, or you could put them all into a green smoothie. My husband made a free website, I'll tell you about that, where you can just look at recipes, no email address required. Like we don't take anything from you. You can just go there and watch and learn and get recipes and stuff. So we had, so the cruciferous vegetables, omega-3 fatty acids are the key ingredient to your anti-inflammatory immune system, which is supposed to repair damage in the body. But if you have excess omega-6, you will stop that part of your immune system from working. And where does omega-6 come from? Highest dose is from meat, dairy, eggs, and oils, right? And so for a lot of people, that's pretty much all they eat, right? Is meat, dairy, eggs, oils. And so they're getting flooded with this inflammatory omega-6, which creates the inflammatory immune system, which we need, but we don't need it to be rampant, right? We're supposed to have some balance between the systems. Right. The omega-3, the only way to get that to at a high enough dose to fight back is from things like flax and chia seeds. But who's eating that? Right? So what we found to work for hypernourishment is like start out with like a handful a day at least of flax or chia seeds. And if you can minimize eating that other stuff, you're going to get your immune system to function much, much faster. And then the other part that's missing for most people's lives is enough water intake. When I met my husband, I was a med student. So I was only drinking Diet Coke and coffee. That was it. Wow. That was what I was drinking. And overnight, he converted me to, I still do it, a gallon of water a day. Right? You can see this water bottle is bigger than my head. Yeah. Yeah. But a gallon of water weighs 8 pounds and it's good for reps. You can get like bicep curls in, But I switched to that overnight. And listen, most people are extremely dehydrated. When you're dehydrated, one, it causes brain fog, constipation, headaches, and a malfunctioning immune system. It also causes your organs to age faster. So for a lot of folks, they look and feel way older than they need to. Plus they got constipation and headaches, and it's just because of water. Just freaking water fixes it. So I don't make everybody start at a gallon a day because some people, that's going to be too much for them. So I usually tell people, if you're not seeing me where I can work with you, figure out your dosage, try to get about like a half an ounce to an ounce per pound of your body weight up into a gallon. So if you're 128 pounds, fine, you can drink that much. If you're 180 pounds, still only drink the gallon. Don't, drink more than that. People do need to have some sodium in their diet with high water intake. Most folks are already getting that by a lot. when people switch to more clean diets, sometimes they have to add it. But the key thing is that you get enough water, you get enough omega-3, and you get enough of those vegetables in. And what happens is if you hit the doses that are hypernourishment, you actually can feel the changes happen. Sometimes people just be like, well, I added a salad, I added a glass of smoothie.
Yeah.
That's great. But you got about 100 trillion cells holding out empty cups. You want some healing to happen, we need to really flood the environment. And green smoothies, by the way, are the greatest way to add. You can put your, let's say you take kale, you can also use spinach. It's not cruciferous, but it lives nearby. You can shove that into a blender, take a handful of flax or chia, put the water in, and then add fruit for flavor, pineapple, banana, whatever you like, and blend it up. What happens is it tastes like the fruit, but with a straw, you can get all that hypernourishment in, and you can, without having to think or measure for the rest of the day. So we created that system to make it something easy for people, especially since most folks don't naturally like to eat a lot of cruciferous vegetables. I actually like them. I healed on broccoli and guacamole because I didn't know about smoothies. I just shoved it down. I drank the oil for the omega-3, like you can use flax oil things, and I did it. I just made it happen. The smoothies make it a lot tastier for people.
Yeah. So you suggest water. Now, can you use almond milk or any other types of milk like soy or almond?
Sure, you could use an unsweetened almond milk for flavoring if you like. Or if you're someone who wants, like, I need to have some coffee, I want to put some, something in there, but you don't want to do the dairy. Dairy is by far the most toxic to our bodies. It's pro-cancer, it's pro-inflammation. It's a really, really it's not a human food. It's supposed to be for baby cows to breastfeed, right? But we've gotten addicted to it. It's very bad for our bodies. But if you want to put unsweetened almond milk just to lighten the coffee, okay, or you want to use it for flavoring in the smoothie, but it doesn't count towards the water. So if you're trying to hydrate and it's too much water for you to think about all at once, then using the smoothie helps. And by the way, I don't want anyone listening to think like tomorrow I have to do all of this, and then you try to shove it all in, your stomach hurts, you're gassy, like she was crazy. Like you can take time to kind of start working on it and go, you know what, I need to add more raw nourishment to my life. Got to add more of these foods in. Let me start working on my water and try to get yourself doing that. When people are not critically ill, taking your time is fine, where you start to increase nourishment and start to weed out the stuff that makes you sick. When people are very ill, I often will put them on very strict programs for their diet, but those work. I published getting someone off the transplant list for a kidney transplant for lupus nephritis in 6 weeks. I've gotten people off the lung transplant list for autoimmune disease that destroyed lung function. A man in his 70s, another man in his 70s had no more glaucoma in 5 weeks. I mean, it gives me goosebumps every time, that the whole body just drops into this repair mode and things get better that you never imagined could, that I never believed or was trained could. But now after I was just looking, I've helped over 4,000 people now. At this point, I know that it works, and it's so remarkable how well it works. And just the more sick you are, the more aggressive you need to be. I also would just want to throw in before you ask a question, if you've got kidney failure though, those folks really do need to work with me, because when you got kidney failure, there's potassium restriction, there's water restriction, and it can be dangerous to just drop into hypernourishment if your kidneys can't process it. So I just want to make sure anyone who's on a restriction like that, that's when you do want to work with me, so I can personalize the plan and make sure that you get nourishment without causing problems for your health.
Got you. I want to go back to the almond milk because I heard that almond milk is plant-based. Now, is that true, or is it, can you take almond milk daily? Can you just take it with your smoothie?
Yeah.
And you'll still
absolutely, yeah. Almond milk is just almonds and water and maybe some preservatives most of the time, but I've never seen anyone, get sick from the preservative. I've seen lots of people get sick from the other stuff. So yeah, it is plant-based, absolutely.
Okay.
And they water it down so much it doesn't really affect omega-6 or anything. It's basically an almond flavored water.
Oh, okay.
It'll do the job if you need something to act like a milk type substitute. Yeah.
Okay, got you. So we are not supposed to be eating processed foods. Is that the bottom line?
Yeah. So, in Goodbye Lupus, and on my online classes, I go through the 6 steps to healing with supermarket foods, right? And so the first 3 steps are about adding what you're missing, which I just gave you, right? They're really the second 3, but we just went through that. Right. And the other 3 are about what makes you sicker. So I already mentioned the animal products. Those really, really disrupt health. They're pro-cancer, pro-inflammation, and they will cause autoimmune diseases or other diseases like high blood pressure, diabetes. The other ones that are going to make you sick, processed foods. Processed foods tend to be very high in sugars, oils, things that make you sick. And then the other one is oils in general. People are covered, and when they do eat vegetables, they're covering them in oil and then cooking them up. So they're killing the health benefit. And then the oils themselves tends to make you insulin resistant, and also can create more inflammation because remember the omega-6 I talked about, the inflammatory immune system. So for a lot of folks that I meet, I mean, nowadays, by the time people meet with me, they've already been practicing and they know what to do. But majority of people in our world have converted to the Western style of eating, where it's mostly meat, dairy, processed foods, oils. And an interesting study that came out recently, they were looking at how autoimmune diseases have gone up anywhere from 3 to 9% every year for the past 40 years, which is a lot. And so it's also spreading to areas of the world that didn't have it before, like the Middle East and Asia.
Yeah.
And so these scientists at Frick Institute in England were trying to figure out maybe human genetics is changing. If autoimmune is purely a genetic disease, which is what medical textbooks teach, then there must be a genetic reason why autoimmune disease is spreading and increasing 3 to 9% every year. And what they found, there's been no change in human genetics. What they discovered is the rise and spread of autoimmune has exactly mirrored the rise and spread of the Western diet. So we are eating ourselves sick, and we can undo it. It's difficult at first because you have to give up all the stuff you're addicted to that you're used to, but the payoff is beyond anything you could imagine. Whatever that early time is where you miss the old foods, that passes in about a month or so. And then you get to enjoy amazing vitality and health that you get to keep forever.
That's amazing. You know, just want to share something real quick. I know I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, and I couldn't move my finger. One of my fingers was just like stuck. I couldn't hardly move it. And I found somewhere online where you can drink some cucumber, and I think it was cucumber and what was the other thing? Okay, cucumber and something with water. And I started drinking that, and my fingers just started moving fine. And I'm like, wow, this stuff really works. And I had to stop eating the processed foods and all of that stuff. And I was like, wow, this really works. But how do we, in my culture, we like collard greens. I mean, I know I love collard greens and sweet potato pie and all that good stuff, you have on Thanksgiving. But how do you move from that? It's difficult, because like you said earlier, you're used to this. You're used to the food.
Yeah, but I wasn't born like this. My kids were lucky. They never had to fight food addictions or anything like that.
Right.
When they see commercials with meat or dairy, they think it looks disgusting. I grew up, a standard diet. My parents owned a pizza place when I was a teenager. I ate pizza twice a day, lunch and dinner. And I thought I was lucky, right? So I grew up very much on a Western diet, and also with traditions, Jewish staples, chicken soup, right? And all the things and having the lox, the fish, and all the stuff that I don't eat any of that stuff anymore. And bagels, so much bread and all this stuff. So in order to get healthy, I had to move away from that. But I think there's a couple of parts to it, right? Because I think one, we have to acknowledge that eating correctly for our health is not just about knowledge, right? Because you would listen to one lecture like this and be like, okay, cool, I'm going to eat a high raw plant-based diet and done. And there are people who do that, that are not addicted to foods, right? For most people, it's not knowledge alone, but it is tradition, like you just mentioned, it's addiction. It's that they use food for emotional coping because they're not doing enough to feel better in their life. So when they have a hard day, they go to food or alcohol or things, right? So they don't have another coping mechanism in place. It's insecurity and not being willing to stand up for themselves. So they feel peer pressured and they give in. There's so many different aspects. And that's why when I do programs with people, I actually work on all of those aspects. So, I mentioned the Goodbye Lupus Protocol, which is really the nutrition. What's become known to the public is the Goodbye Autoimmune Disease Protocol, which is my second book. is all about the emotional and lifestyle side of changing your life, because the information is one part. But for you to make this change, you have to overcome food addiction. You have to overcome peer pressure. You have to be willing to prioritize yourself and plan your meals, willing to stand up for yourself, even if grandma's trying to push the chicken soup on you. Be able to say no, because my grandma used to do that. She'd be like, I won't tell anyone, eat some chicken soup. I don't want it. But, there's so many different aspects. And so I think it's important to address those things and say, yeah, the cravings are a real thing. And ask for the support you need to say, you know what, I'm trying to do this thing for my health because I want to live, right? I want to live not just in the moment where I could eat something that's going to destroy my kidneys or my lungs, but I want to live to 105 and be well, right? So I need to move past this. So one is really invoking support and telling friends and family, because friends and family often will think they're supporting you by saying, oh, you've been so good, have a little cake, right? So you're like, no, I need you to support me by saying, you're doing so good, can I get you something? What would you like? And you could say, I'd like some fruit, or I'd like a salad, or, you let them know, right? So that's one thing. Planning. Being kind and gracious to yourself, that if you mess up, if you trip and fall and your face lands in the cake and you accidentally eat some, then you dust yourself off and you clean off your face. You go, okay, I'm a person. I fell down. I fell, and I can get up and I can start again and I can keep working, right? And getting support if you need it. What I found helps people the most is you need to have support. Coaching helps a lot. I mean, there's a lot of people who join. I have programs where it's 4 or 6 weeks of working with me every day called Rapid Recovery. And the reason I created them is not because I don't like to take days off. It's because I know if I can work with people every day in the first month to month and a half, they can do it on their own after that. But for the first few weeks, there's cravings and there's what about this party and what about Thanksgiving and what about my birthday? And I help them navigate that, like, okay, here's what you're going to do. Here's what you're going to say. And I help them overcome it. I'm looking at a cookie. It's looking back at me. All right, get out of the kitchen. Come on, go for a walk. Right. But it's really the same as when people get off of drugs or alcohol. What do? They need to have a community, support, and they also need that person that their sponsor, right? So I kind of move into that role. And like my rapid recovery group, we have a community. So it's people together, they're all moving together to like give up those foods and to be better themselves, but also to replace the enjoyment that they put on food, because we use food as entertainment nowadays. We are not using it for nutrition, we're using it for fun. That's why I call it recreational eating, because it's like recreational drugs. You're getting high, but you're not eating for health. So you got to replace the recreation. So for example, like my husband and I go on a date, it's rarely going to be about food. Normally our date is going to be like, we did family night at we did the escape room over the weekend. You know those?
Yeah.
Escape room. I did it with my boys. We broke a record. We escaped in 36 seconds. Or 36 seconds, 36 minutes. We're not that fast with 36 minutes, but like, we love that. So we go to escape rooms, we go to museums, we go to like activities. So instead of like a date or family activity is let's go get pizza, the activity is let's go experience something. Let's go see a show or hear music or do like an escape room or do or rock climbing, do something that is an actual experience. And what ends up happening is when people stop relying on food for coping, they find that they live at a much higher level. Because I don't care if I just had a smoothie or a salad, because my life is fun and purposeful and I have so much interesting stuff going on that food is just a small part of it. But for a lot of people, especially who are disabled or sick or depressed, food is like the highlight of their day. And until we fix that issue, they're always going to fall back on it. So it is very multifaceted. And I am, so I'm a specialist in trauma. I'm board certified in psychiatry and neurology. And I went into specialty of helping people overcome trauma resilience. Because in my family, trauma resilience. And so I use that a lot in my work with people in recovery, because the biggest part of changing your diet is not really knowing what to shop for, but it's all here. It's all the emotions and the self-sabotage and all of that stuff. Once this is on board, it's easy. If you're like, I don't eat that anymore, then it's easy. But if you're like, oh, what am I going to do? I don't know if I can live this way. That's hard. That's the suffering.
That's how I make it hard.
It takes a lot, but it's worth it.
Okay. Yes. Living is worth it. I'm going to open up if there will be any.
I'm going to have some of this water.
Any questions? If anyone have any questions online that you would like to ask Dr. Brooke.
I see some in the chat here.
Okay.
All right, let's see. Michelle Shelton wants to know what's the name of her book. So Goodbye Lupus and Goodbye Autoimmune Disease. And Anea Cornwall wants to know how much lean meat should we eat? So ideally, you want to get the meat out. So lean meat at least has less fats in it, so it'll be less inflammatory. But if you're trying to get healthy, are you looking for less sick or not sick? So really, the more you cut that out, the better. In my classes and in my book about autoimmune, I have a lot of case studies in there. There's a young man named David who's actually been featured in magazines and movies himself now since healing on my program. But he had lupus, Sjogren's, and scleroderma, and he had terrible rashes. His fingers were stuck like this, and they were open where he needed to get. The doctors before me told him the only way to fix his fingers was to amputate them, because, and he was in his 20s. So this was the best Western medicine could do for him. And he was so sick, he was just home, he couldn't work, nothing. And within a few weeks on my plan, these healed up, his face cleared up, and for the first time he felt healthy. And this was a dozen years ago now. He is one of my first clients that I did this program with. And his mom, I'll never forget Gloria, she came and saw me speak, and she said, you know, I've been praying for you and you're going to fix my David. And I was like, I am? And I hadn't even really been, I was just giving my own testimony. I hadn't really been applying it to other people too much. We were still testing and working. So I worked with David, and what happened was he did my plan and he decided to just eat lean meat once a week, and it worked. He went into remission, but he still used medication, but he was in remission. He looked good and he was doing great. He maintained that for 2 years. Then he came to see me when I was giving a talk in California, and he goes, you know, I forgot that you ever told me that I shouldn't eat meat, and I never tried giving it up. I wonder what would happen. So 2 years in remission with meds, which he never got remission on meds alone before, right? So he was happy. 2 weeks after he gave up meat completely, they tapered him off his meds. 2 weeks after he finally gave up the meat. So it's like, if you eat meat, sometimes you can get a remission. And you'll hear sometimes people talk about there are these protocols where they'll say just eat the lean meats or whatever. It's for some people, it's enough of improvement for them to feel dramatically better. But if you get rid of it completely, you can actually reverse the disease. And when I call it reversal, I mean the symptoms are gone. You don't need medication anymore, and the labs come back too. And for me, that's full reversal. Like if you take a blood test from me, there is no sign of disease. It's not just a remission like I used to get from my medicines. So the least, the better. That's my long way of answering less the better. Kazendi Rose wants to know, is olive oil okay for salads? Olive oil does not have much omega-6. So out of all the general oils, it's a better choice. It's mostly omega-9. However, if you want it to be an anti-inflammatory oil, use flax oil instead. And you can actually get some benefit from that oil in your salad, or just throw guacamole on it and forget the oil. All right, and Gloria kind of asked the same question, and Anea wants to know, can seafood work? No, it's really not a good alternative. So, you know, when I first started doing this, I thought, okay, omega-3, why don't we use fish, right? Because omega-3 in fish, and especially, but omega-3s, first of all, they oxidize, they break down when they're exposed to heat. So if you cook a fish, you're not going to get that much omega-3 from it anymore, right? So I thought sushi, okay, right? That could work. Here's the problem though, and this is why I don't include fish anymore for over a decade, is one, the oceans right now, fish have more parasites than ever. A friend of mine from my residency sent me an MRI where someone had worms through their whole body from parasites from fish, from sushi. So I was like, that is one problem. Two, every single piece of fish or every single fish they've taken from the ocean for testing has been positive for pollution. So when we have all this industrial pollution going up into the sky, it rains down into the ocean and it absorbs into the flesh of the fish. So every time you eat fish, you're eating pollution, industrial pollution. They call it PCBs. Then on top of that, if that wasn't enough, we got the mercury issues. I've had so many people come to me who gave up meat and ate fish instead, and they had mercury poisoning, right? And then on top of that, they found in the Pacific Ocean, fish are all testing positive to nuclear waste because of a leak that's been happening in Japan forever. So it's like, I would say in general, fish not good for the health. It's just not what it was. So we have to be where the earth is right now. And so really a plant-based lifestyle is the healthiest thing you can do for your body.
For that.
There's the questions.
Here's another one. What is the best way to supplement protein?
Okay, that's a great question. And for most people, the answer is surprising. You don't need to. So the whole idea of protein being important, it came from a long time ago when one of the first macronutrients discovered by a scientist, and macronutrients meaning like protein, carbs, fat, one of the first ones discovered under a microscope was protein. And so, like all scientists who think whatever they discovered is the most important thing ever discovered, they're like, this must be what makes people healthy. This must be important. And it led to a lot of research that disproved it. So, for example, T. Colin Campbell, he wrote a book called The China Study that showed that as people eat more meat and more dairy, they have more cancer. But when he first did his research, he was trying to create meat with more protein in it to solve world hunger. That was his goal, was if protein is what makes people vital, then we'll just do that. And what he found is the more protein he supplied to animals he tested, the more cancer they got. And that's how he discovered that dairy actually causes cancer genes to turn on the promoter region of DNA. So his research was really important. But what we found is the trigger for most diseases that are killing people today is high protein intake from animal products. So meat, dairy, eggs, all that stuff is creating heart disease. Number one cause of death in our country is people dying of heart attacks. Number one cause of death of people with lupus is a heart attack, right? So if you look at heart disease, diabetes, cancers, autoimmune diseases, those are all being pushed forward by people eating huge amounts of animal products, high protein foods. So what it turns out is that that's actually not what we need for health. What we need is vitamins and minerals and antioxidants, oh my, right? Omega-3s, all these things that come from plants. And those things happen to have protein as well. So for most people who are not bodybuilders, right, trying to get massive and big, you're getting enough protein just by eating plant foods. But there's other foods as well that if you're eating other plant foods, tofu has got more protein in it than many meats do and has none of the bad stuff. They've tested it, doesn't cause any damage to the body. Even in kidney failure, they've shown that any animal products causes the kidneys to fail faster. Tofu does not. So it's not protein, it's whatever else is in the animal product itself. But there's beans, there's quinoa, but really you don't even need to look at that. If you are getting enough of the fruits and vegetables, omega-3s, other things, you will have enough protein to live. And they've shown that with any kind of food. The only people who are protein deficient, these are the people who are protein deficient. People who are starving, right? So if you just are not eating, right, you will be protein deficient, makes sense, or not eating enough. So anorexia or starvation, like in countries where there's not enough food, right? There is people who have kidney failure. That will make you protein deficient because the protein's falling out of your urine, not because you're not eating enough, but because you're losing it. Heal the kidneys, protein goes up, right? Inflammation can do that, right? But these are the cases where people are actually protein deficient. But in general, you could eat nothing but vegetables, you won't be protein deficient. You can eat nothing but potatoes and not be protein deficient. It's really not a real issue, but the industries that make money off it sure like to make it seem really important. We've got the protein. I'm like, yeah, you can have it. So let me see here.
Yeah, she's talking about the doctors. The doctors are gonna tell you that, but they're not gonna.
Well, the thing is, it's
I'll let
important to
you
understand.
answer.
It's important to understand that doctors aren't trained in nutrition, right? And so I always say it, I know it's ironic because of who I am, that if a doctor tries to tell you what to eat, run, right? Because they're not trained in nutrition. What we are trained in is about cellular biology, right? And we can understand the physiology of things. So once we get the right information about nutrition, we can understand that about the pathology and the biology of what's happening in the cells. But it's not taught to us in medical school. This has been my life's work to study and understand this. And because I'm a physician, I know how to apply it and teach it. And I teach doctors and medical students too. But it's a really important thing that is just left out of medical education. It's interesting because I'm working with someone now. I just met with him yesterday, and he's a medical student who's also very sick. And he's looking to get healthy with me, right? But he's just started a medical student program at Loma Linda, where they actually have courses in what they call lifestyle medicine. And lifestyle medicine is a new specialty that looks at the impact of diet on health. And it's starting to enter curriculums in schools. And I've helped teach some of these. And all of the lifestyle medicine has shown that plant-based diets can prevent and reverse disease, and animal-based diets cause disease. So the science is solid, and the new doctors being trained right now, some of them are getting that training. But the ones that are existing, the only way they know it is if they've already been looking to learn. Like I said, I've trained thousands of doctors around the world, but it's not enough to get people everywhere. You know, like I get referrals from doctors in California, New York, places like that, but middle of the country, oftentimes their doctor hasn't, you know, they're not even looking to stuff like that. So it's kind of hit or miss.
Wow.
And doctors are sick too. I mean, usually when doctors get sick, that's when they join my programs, because when a doctor gets sick, suddenly they start Googling.
Yes.
They're like, I don't want that medicine. Let me Google. Let me see what alternative health exists. And then the next thing you know, I see them.
Yes. She said she's been diagnosed with lupus last week and have super tired in the middle of the day.
Okay.
Is there something I can exercise wise to help this?
Well, first of all, I'm really happy that you're here. I find that every time I give a talk, there's somebody in the audience where I'm like, oh, this was for you. Okay. So first of all, I want you to know that there is hope and you can get better. I literally do this every day. Just got diagnosed means that it's early. Let's get you back over that hump. You crossed over the line. Let's get you back over it again. Now, it's very common with lupus and any other autoimmune disease to be very tired. It takes a lot of energy for your immune system to be on all the time, creating all this inflammation. And when people add things like the hypernourishment I was just talking about, people often tell me the first thing they notice is the energy, because that's the other thing. When people are tired, chronic disease causes fatigue, but also not enough sleep. So check yourself there, malnourishment and dehydration. So most people walking around who are tired, especially if they get enough sleep, malnourishment and dehydration. So hypernourishment is the answer. People think they need more caffeine, but really what they need is to get that water in, get those smoothies in, and you'll see a big change in your energy levels itself. For those of you that are kind of, this is the first time you've ever heard it, I can tell you some resources to get started. So first of all, I do free information to the public every day. So I'm always posting on social media. So Instagram, Facebook, depends on your age, like those of us over 40 on the Facebook side, the rest of people on the Instagram side, and YouTube. So if you look up at Goodbye Lupus, you can find me everywhere. And every Wednesday, I do free live Q&As to the public. So every Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. Pacific on all my channels, so on Instagram, on Facebook, and on YouTube, I do free Q&As live for the public every single week. I carve out that time so that people who are trying to follow my free information and heal on their own, who just need to ask questions, they can come. So so people show up from everywhere. So I have like all of my cameras going, so I answer questions from everywhere. So for people who are looking for more information and you want to have that content, and if you're on those channels, you can also click the learn more button and get like all the access to, you know, the books and things. I mean, my website, goodbyelupus.com, the free smoothie recipes are smoothieshred.com. But if you go at Goodbye Lupus on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, you can find me everywhere. And I'm always given to the public to try to help people get better. So you can get lots of information that way. Most of my messages I get in my email are people who are following me online and their health is getting better without having to see me or pay me a cent. You know, the people who work with me are the ones that either need the emotional help to get over the obstacles, or they've got organ failure, serious disease. Like in my current rapid recovery group, I think 10 people are in kidney failure, you know, and then we've got people with all sorts of other serious diseases, serious symptoms who need to get it right as quickly as possible.
I did have someone that was, but she's not on, and she's dealing with MGUS.
I'm not sure.
Can you hear me?
Like, is it myasthenia gravis or is it
MGUS?
Devin, in the meantime, wants to know if you can gain muscle mass on this if you are a bodybuilder. Yes, you can. So remember, the original protocol came from my husband's work. I'll show it to you. So people who are looking for how to get fit, that's him, Miracle Metabolism. So his work was really about how do you optimize metabolism so you can get results from your workouts. Like if you're doing cardio, you should be losing fat. If you're doing bodybuilding, you should be gaining muscle. And a lot of people, they just don't get results. They find most people work out every day, gain weight over the years. They get slowly fatter. And he's like, this should not be. So what works for metabolism, what he discovered and what we discovered together is that a fast metabolism also means a body that can heal faster, right? But if you are healthy and you're just looking to gain mass, then you want to follow more his program where you add hypernourishment so you can get the metabolism, and then you use other foods to gain weight. So the tofu and the beans and the grains, because when you're trying to get bigger, you have to force your body to gain weight, right? So usually when people are getting healthier, they're losing weight, they're losing fat, they're trying to get strong. But yes, you can definitely do it. And what he found is you can gain muscle faster on a plant-based diet on half the protein than he could as a bodybuilder before that when he was eating animal products. So even doing the, full Goodbye Lupus protocol with none of those extra foods in them, you can get stronger and you can get fitter, but you're not going to get bigger. If you're trying to gain mass, and you are healthy, you go ahead and do that protocol. But if you're not healthy, then you just wait. You get strong and fit and lean. And then once you're healthy and you want to like build a bigger booty, then you move over and you say, fine, I'll add some other grains and things and I'll do my squats and gain size. So yeah, you can absolutely do it. And yes, here we go. I'll type in the website. So for the smoothie recipes, it's smoothieshred.com. And then if you want to see more about goodbyelupus.com also has free gifts like a video of me showing how to build the smoothies and stuff like that. So I said we give a ton to the public, and then I'll type it here at Goodbye Lupus for Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. If you look that up, you'll find me. You'll see the space. And
it seems like
although
one
trainer I just found made a Facebook page called Smoothie Shred with a screenshot of my face as a profile picture. Yeah, so he thought my face could sell his fitness program, but when you click on his link, it takes you to some other guy and some other program. So that's not it. It's a group called the Smoothie Shred group on Facebook. You can get the real page if you go to smoothieshred.com and you want to join our free community. Then you can just click the link from the page and it takes you to the real one. But if it's a weird screenshot of me like talking, that's not. No, I put a nice picture as my profile picture.
I found out what that MDES is. It's monoclonal gammopathy. I don't know.
Okay. So this is a blood disease that could potentially become a cancer. I don't have any cases I can give you for that. So if I have a case, I tell you. If I don't, I never make it up. I just tell you what I know. But I have helped people with different kinds of cancers who you should get medical treatment. All right, but who added my nutrition program to it, and it helped them. That helped them dramatically with how good they felt with markers, blood markers, tumor size, all of those things. It's been really, really good, but does not replace getting medical treatment. I just want to make sure I say that. Sometimes doctors flip out and they're like, "You're telling people not to get treatment." I'm like, no, I'm telling people to live.
Right. Right.
I'm just saying live and be healthy. So yeah. All right, so let's see. So Kazandi Rose says, I'm a skinny woman. I feel like eating veggie diet, I'll lose weight. So I strongly recommend that you do watch the videos on my channel, because I address this issue a lot. First of all, being skinny is good. It is better for your health to be skinny. I know for a lot of folks, they'd rather be curvy and all that kind of stuff, but it's not healthy. So being skinny is healthy. I'm skinny. I'm good, it's fine, but my grandmother to her dying day said that I was more beautiful when I was a size 8 than a size 0 or so, oh, you were so, I said, yeah, you thought I was beautiful. The kidneys are failing. I was getting blood clots, I had arthritis, I had migraines, and now I'm thin and I'm strong, I'm fit. I just did boot camp this morning. I don't even know how I'm lifting my arms up right now. I'm very fit and strong. I have very low body fat, but I'm healthy, so one of those things is just like being okay with that. But 2, you will get to you even out. You don't just, if you're eating enough foods, even if it's raw foods, you're not going to just disappear. You get to a level and then that's your weight. But the most important thing is that your healthy weight is your weight when you're healthy. And so I constantly, every Q&A, I get this, somebody who says, I can't afford to lose weight. I'm like, what does that even mean? I don't know what that means. Like what I care about is, are you healthy or not? If you're not healthy, you get on this program and get healthy. And whenever you're healthy, you'll go, oh, this is my healthy weight. That's what it's going to be. And then if aesthetically If you just like being thicker aesthetically, then you do it in a healthy way. Once the disease is gone and you're healthy, then fine, add back things like more grains and beans and stuff like that. But you better be working out, because otherwise you're just going to gain fat, and that is not healthy. So we do really have to do some switching, and it's a difficult thing, you know, because a lot of times people feel picked on by the family members, you know, about being skinny, but being skinny is healthy. And usually the people who are picking on you are not healthy. So we do have to do a bit of changing, but people don't lose too much and get too skinny. If you're too skinny, you're not eating enough food, right? I mean, pretty much what's going on. The other thing is, a lot of times people will lose muscle when they're sick. People lose muscle not because of food. They lose muscle because they are sedentary. If you don't use it, you lose it. Or taking steroids, which a lot of people with autoimmune disease will take prednisone and steroids. And one of the things that does is it catabolizes or destroys muscle tissue. Yeah. So, and it makes you fatter because you get snacky on steroids. I know, I was on them for years. So what happens is your weight looks like it's staying the same. Your muscles are going away. It's being replaced with fat, but you think you're the same. Then you go on a nutrition plan like mine and the fat goes away and you're like, oh, my muscle's gone. And then they want to blame the diet. I'm like, no, the muscles were not there. It was just revealed. We revealed that you have no muscle, but you can gain it back. So when people are too skinny because of disease and because of malnourishment, usually they gain it back. In my last rapid recovery group, there was a woman who started at 80 pounds and she got up to 86, eating raw vegetables, right? So she's healing and gaining. Whereas most people, you know, lost 30 pounds, but they started at 200, 180, you know? So it's just one of those things where your body will do what it needs to do when you're healthy, and you don't have to control something like weight. If you're controlling for weight, you're probably going to make poor decisions about your health, and we don't want that.
So Dr. Brooke, it is true that once you start this diet of living healthy, you are going to lose a little weight first. And then as you progress, then you can gain it back.
But it is a good thing for most people.
Right.
A lot of people who tell me they don't want to lose weight, I'm like, but you should. We all someone who's like 5 to 150 pounds. No, actually, recently 5 to 150 pounds. She's like, I don't want to lose weight. I'm like, I want you to lose weight. Like, I want you to lose a lot of weight, you know? Right. But it's like, seems like, but I like how, I'm like, if you're healthy, you're going to lose some of this, right? Because it wasn't, listen, she's not a bodybuilder. It wasn't muscle mass. It was body fat. Right. So even though she liked how she looked, it's keeping her sick. So it's just one of those things. And we should all, you know, encourage each other. I don't know why in our cultures, it is shameful and wrong to comment on someone's weight if they're big, but it's perfectly fine to make fun of someone who's skinny. And I think that's a terrible thing, because sometimes people are skinny because they're sick. Sometimes people are skinny because they're working hard to get well. And I don't really think it's right to comment on people's bodies in general. I think unless you compliment.
Yeah.
So, but some initial weight to be lost, usually in the first week or so, even a skinny person could be about 5 pounds. You cannot lose any real weight in a week. You can lose inflammation. You can lose glycogen, which is replaced in a meal, but not actual body mass. So sometimes people will panic and say, oh, I lost 5 pounds the first week. And they make up a story that means they're going to lose 5 pounds every week. And then they'll be at 0 by the end of the year and all that, where usually there's like an initial thing. Yeah, it's not like that. There might be an initial thing and then it evens out. So yeah. So and it's also how much weight. A lot of times in our rapid recovery group, people will join for that reason. And they'll be like, I lost weight. And we're like, no, you didn't. But it says I'm 2 pounds down. Yeah, that's because you went to the bathroom. Like, your weight can go up and down 10 pounds in a day just from pee, poop, food, 10 pounds in a day. Yes. 1 gallon of water weighs 8.5 pounds. If I drink all of this and don't go to the bathroom, I will be up 8.5 pounds. But that's water.
Yeah.
Right?
Look, so I'm skinny, right? I'm thin. Yeah. And when I started using the fruit, vegetables, I stopped eating the stuff I was eating, I lost some weight. I'm like, oh my God, that's not weight. But it's okay to lose that weight. That's what I was asking you. It's okay to lose that weight, because as you go, you'll find out your levels, right, of how you can maintain it. And then you can
and the other thing is, when people first start eating this way, they're so full, because if you're not used to fiber, you feel full and you tend to eat less. But after you've been eating that way for about a month, all of a sudden you get hungry, and then you double, triple how much you were eating before. So it's just one of those things. There's an adjustment period, but ultimately, again, if you're getting healthy, you got to just trust your body. You know, you can't try to manipulate numbers on the scale. You got to trust your body. But I just did a whole big video about this on my Instagram and YouTube and Facebook a couple days ago, called it like the BMI. It was about the BMI. I should say the BMI is a lie, basically. And it was just basically about how wrong it is, the body mass index, where most people who are like on the low end of the index are actually really healthy, right? Or if they're low, it might be because they're like a smoker. You have to find out why, right? But they also found that there were some people that in this one group of people, for example, on a study, 30% of them were considered obese according to the BMI. When they did an actual DEXA scan that shows you how much fat they have, 75% of them were obese. So just by using these normal measurements, they're like, I'm normal body weight, I'm fine. Meanwhile, when you look at the internal fat, most of them were obese and actually needed a lower BMI to be healthy. So it really had nothing to do with what those numbers say. It's how much internalized fat you have. And that could be, you could be a skinny person with fat to lose.
Okay.
You know, or you could be like my husband, who is a bodybuilder, and he doesn't have much body fat, but he's got big muscle. He can, but he's been plant-based now for over 12 years, 13 years now. And he said it was the best thing he ever did, but he didn't want to. He did it. I tricked him, or I'll tell you what I did. I tricked him. I used my womanly wiles. I said, because he was afraid he'd lose his muscle. He's like, I'm glad it made you healthy, but I'm afraid I'll lose my muscle. This is my career. And I said, well, if anyone could figure out how to build muscle on a plant-based diet, it'd be you, because you're so brilliant. And he's like, you know, you're right. I think I could figure this out. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to give it 3 months. Let's see what I come up with. And what happened is, within a week of changing his diet, he's like, I actually feel so good. I've never felt so connected and clear. I feel like really like to spirit, to animals, to the planet, to everything. He's like, I've never felt this good. He's like, you know what? Even if I become a skinny vegan, I think I'll never change this. And what ended up happening is he broke the code, and he figured out you could build up more muscle on a plant-based diet. And, you know, we've gotten all his tests done, and he is, you know, he's in his late 40s, and he has no health problems. He has low cholesterol, low blood pressure. He just has colonoscopy too, perfectly clear, even though the men in his family all colon cancer things. So it's like, I don't want him to save my life just so I could lose him. So for me, that was a very clear thing, you know, so she likes it. That's good, right? But we have to, but it's honest. So when I was raising my kids, I told them the truth about things, about why we eat this way. They know how it saved my life. But, you know, when they were really little and said, why don't we eat that? And I'd say, because I love you too much. And so it got to the point where one day my older son came home from 2nd grade, and he was upset. And I said, what happened? And he goes, why don't my friends' parents love them enough to give them good food? They're just eating burgers and chips and pizza and no vegetables. And it was so cute, because people think they cry because they're missing out on that stuff. No, they're crying that their friends are eating badly and their parents don't love them enough. So I have to tell them, look, their parents love them. They just don't know better. All we can do is know better and do better. My parents loved me and gave me pizza every day. But once you know better, then it is an act of love to do what's better, even if you don't like it. So my kids know I'm not here just to always do what you want to do. I'm here to make sure you are healthy and that you're good people who do good things in this world. And sometimes that's going to be by punishing you or saying no to you. And that's just going to be how it is. But because I always explain things, we're super close. So even if I say no, or I come up with a punishment, they'll be like, I know you're just punishing me because I need to learn this lesson and I didn't learn it. So I'm going to accept this punishment and I'm going to work on this. I'm like, all right, good job, man. So like we communicate. Yeah. And so they understand. I think that's what's important with kids, is that we do decide what's right for them ourselves, but we communicate, you know? Like, I'll tell you one other story that I thought was funny was my husband was giving a talk in Florida, and it was at a vegan restaurant. And the guy running it was talking to me while my husband was working. And he said he decided we're going to go plant-based vegan. And he got rid of all the meat in the house, all the dairy, everything. And then his son was like 13, and he opened the fridge and there's nothing in it. And he starts crying. His son's crying. He goes, Daddy, what are we going to eat? And he said he started crying too. He's like, I don't know, but we'll figure it out. And meanwhile, now they have a restaurant, you know? So it's just kind of one of those things where it's like you can be a team together and say, all right, this is right. Let's work on this, you know? And it's fun to do that, to do that as a family and overcome as a family, you know?
Dr. Brooke, we got one more question, but I want to say too, in addition to that, that the food isn't bad. I mean, I'm sure she has many recipes, and I want you to get the book, whatever you can do to.
Yeah, I have a new recipe coming out at the end of summer. I'm gonna recipe book because people just want more. I'm like, just eat smoothies and salads. They're like, no, we want fancy. So it took me a while.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, there's some really good food. It's really
yes,
good.
yeah, you learn to love it. I never feel like I'm missing out. But you know, I missed out on life when I was home in bed and pain. I don't miss anything now, you know. So it's kind of a perspective switch, you know, where sometimes people think like, well, it's hard to change your diet and it's hard to be sick. Choose your hard. I disagree with that. It's hard to be sick and it gets harder and harder and harder. The longer you're sick, the worse it gets. It's hard to change your diet only initially, and then it becomes easy. So it's really, you know, there is no hard after you get over the first hurdle. The hardest part is making the decision. And then after that, it's learning what to do and getting the food down. But after a couple months, it just becomes easy. And then after a while, you just want that food. Whereas, like I said, being sick is never gets easier.
Okay, we have two more questions. That's it. I know there's one about pasta, and then Devonna was waiting for a while. Devonna, can you go ahead and ask your question?
My question is about chronic pain. Have you ever treated anybody who had chronic pain for several years?
Absolutely. I mean, what is the pain being caused by?
Say that again.
What is the cause of the pain? Is it rheumatoid arthritis?
Just chronic back pain, migraines, things of that.
Yeah. So when it comes to chronic pains like that, so first of all, migraines, yes, absolutely. Number one, well, I won't say number one, there's multiple. The top causes of migraines are going to be dehydration is one of the biggest ones out there. Malnourishment is up there too, but a lot of people, migraines are really being triggered by dehydration. And then it's also muscular tension that are coming through here in the shoulders. So those are things to address. Back pain also, there tends to be a muscular component. So what the nutrition will do is bring down the inflammation, which can make you feel better and help your body with recovery. But if you have chronic pain, usually the muscles around the painful areas will tend to kind of get sticky together. Layman's term is like knots, right? Adhesions. And if you don't break them up, then even with the right nutrition, they're going to stay there. So usually with chronic back pains and even neck pains that can lead to migraines, I recommend you also work with someone who can do physical therapy and massage so you can solve the other causes of it, while the nourishment then lets you heal the damage.
Okay, and I'm sorry, the second question. As for gluten-free recipes, do you have those?
Okay, so let me get the one before it was about pasta. So if you're adding hypernourishment and you're eating other things, pasta's fine, right? It's plant-based. Is it inflammatory? Yeah, it's processed. It's not as inflammatory as animal products, but it's still a processed thing. So it's not like an everyday thing. Gluten-free. So hypernourishment is gluten-free because it's vegetables, omega-3s, water intake, right? That's gluten-free. If you want to add in other plant foods, you can totally do it gluten-free. A lot of people are. So there's plenty of options for like gluten-free oats. And then of course things like beans and all the different cooked vegetables and tofu. And there's just so many things out there that you can consume that's gluten-free. I found for a lot of folks who are not specifically celiac that they're not really reacting to gluten, but processed food. So if I give them like a sprouted bread, like Ezekiel bread, they feel fine. But the bread that never goes bad, that can sit in the pantry for like 6 months and never mold, that's the kind that usually people react to. But if you are actually gluten sensitive, you can still do it for sure.
Are you good, Devonna?
Thank you. I think another question about celiac disease on there.
Yeah, I have celiac. Yeah, I've actually had 2 people with celiac that did rapid recovery with me that reversed it and that were able to go back to grains again, which was pretty cool. One was a doctor up in Canada and one was a 24-year-old who did it with me. And they were able to completely reverse it. I don't recommend that you test those things, you know, especially if you're working on your own. You don't want to like, let's try graves and see how I feel, but you can do it and you can get it confirmed, you know, with colonoscopy, blood markers for a lot of people. But there is a path back because for most people, even some people are celiac from birth. Okay, let's, you know, probably going to keep it.
Because I think I got stuck again or something. It seems like I've known you already forever. You have such a positive, you know, aura about yourself and such a wonderful personality. And I'm just glad that you were on today because we need this. We needed this because we need to know that there's hope and we need to know that we can be cured. You know, we don't have to live in this, in the same place, or we don't have to hear what the doctors, of course, we hear what the doctor's saying, but we can turn it around like you did. You turned it around with what we already have available to us. And that's plant-based, taking it back to the Bible from the beginning in Genesis. That's what everything came from. That's
yeah. Yeah, you know, it's funny. I had a minister who she invited me to speak at her church after she came to me, and she was in so much pain, and her, you know, all her ministry, they watched her become disabled where she could barely walk around on the stage in the church. And then she worked with me and we got her back. She was very obese. She lost all the weight. She got really fit and all of her pain went away. And she went to hopping and jumping around. So she started a whole new program at her church. Wow. She called it Eat to Live, right? And so she invited me to come speak. And look, I have a gift from her that she gave me at the conference. And it's called Eat to Live, Genesis 1:29. Yeah. And so she said, working with me brought her back to the Bible to say, you know what, maybe this was the way, and maybe this is what I was meant to learn. And what was cool is before, after church every day, everyone would go and eat bad stuff together. And now at that church, it's all plant-based. So after they have their services, they all get together and eat plant-based together. So, you know, I think for every person, the worst thing that ever happened to you can also give birth to your gift, help you find your gift, right? And so I think for a lot of people, I feel like that's really my role, is to help them through the worst part so that they can get to living what they were meant to live and to giving the gifts they're meant to give. So I appreciate you inviting me on and letting me share that, what my gifts were and what I received, and hopefully it will help some of your audience as well.
You are so wonderful. You are wonderful. Thank you, thank you, thank you for coming today. And I just want to share with you all, ladies, the Bible says that we are to prosper and be of good health, even as thy soul prospers. So if we have destiny to fulfill, we got to be well. We got to be healed. We don't want to be trying to do something, reach people, and we can't even reach ourselves. So I'm just so very elated, and I want you to, ladies, get all you can from her. I think you got all the websites. You gave them all the websites.
Okay, so in case this wasn't long enough with me, 90 minutes, and you want to be able to see me talk and answer other people's questions, it's an hour every week, and I just answer questions. And I have a lot of people say they come every week because they always get something new, learn something new. But it's part of my public service that I do to give back is those Wellness Wednesdays. So hopefully I'll see some of you there.
So awesome, so awesome. Again, thank you. And I want to give you this scripture again. Jeremiah 29:11 says, I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you. So the food is not going to harm you. It's going to make us better and to give you a hope and a future. So we see you next time at the conversation. God bless you. Thank you for coming, everybody. We love you. Thank you. Bye.